Have you ever tried to learn a new language? If so, I bet you've been absolutely flooded with advice. You know, things like, oh, you have to be a genius, or whatever you do, never speak your native tongue. But how many of those so-called golden rules are actually helping you, and how many are just myths holding you back?
And that's the big problem, right? So much of this advice is conflicting, or it's totally outdated, or it's just plain wrong. And it can make you feel super frustrated, like you're not making any progress, and maybe you're just not good at languages. But the truth is, you might just be following the wrong map. So today we're going to deconstruct all of these beliefs. We're putting the common wisdom to the test, using some really interesting data from a survey of learners and teachers to separate the stubborn myths from the surprising realities. Let's get this myth-busting adventure started. Okay, first up, let's talk about you, the learner. Because there are so many ideas floating around about who can and can't learn a language and what kind of special qualities you supposedly need to have to succeed. This one is probably one of the most intimidating myths out there. This idea that you have to be some kind of genius to become fluent. What do you think? Is there really a direct link between a high IQ and, being able to order a coffee in Paris? Well, it looks like most people are pretty skeptical of this idea. Our survey shows that a clear majority believes this is false. But hang on, look closer. That means nearly 40% of people still think you need to be a genius. That is a huge psychological barrier that might be stopping them before they even start.
And that majority is absolutely correct. This is definitively 100% false. Now sure, a sharp mind helps with any kind of learning, but study after study has shown no significant link between a high IQ and language success. So let's be crystal clear. You do not need to be a genius to learn another language. Period. All right, so if it's not about being some kind of innate genius, then what about the learning process itself? Now we're going to dig into the how, the methods, the classroom vibes, and all the myths that surround them. We're about to tackle 3 very, very common classroom rules that you've probably run into. So are these best practices, or are they just bad habits that we can't seem to shake? And just look at this. The wisdom of the crowd is pretty clear across the board. Big majorities, they're rejecting the whole idea of instantly correcting every error and that strict target language only rule. It's like people just instinctively know that a super rigid, punishing approach isn't the way to go. Even the idea that learning as an adult is the same as being a baby is correctly called out as a myth by most people. And yep, this illustrates the point perfectly. All 3 of these are in fact false. Think about it. Constant correction can totally destroy a learner's confidence. Using your native language can actually be a huge help for understanding tricky grammar. And your adult brain learns way differently than a toddler's. So, if your teacher is doing this stuff, it might be time to find a new approach. Okay, let's pivot for a second to 2 related ideas that people feel really strongly about. Are you just a parrot when you learn a new language? And is your native language your own worst enemy? And whoa, here we see a complete flip. A slight majority believes imitation is key. But look at that second point. A massive 73% agree that our mother tongue is what trips us up the most. And every learner feels this, right? It's like when a Spanish speaker says, I have 30 years, instead of I am 30 years old, because they're directly translating. We've all been there. And the people who took the survey totally nailed it again. Both of these are considered true. Mimicry and repetition are fundamental, especially for mastering pronunciation. And yes, a huge chunk of common errors comes from what linguists call L1 interference, which is just a fancy way of saying your first language's habits are messing with your new one. So, we've busted some myths, we've confirmed some realities, but let's get to the heart of it all. What's the one thing that will truly make or break your language learning journey? So, if it's not about being a genius, and it's not about following these super rigid classroom rules, then what is it? What's the one ingredient that all successful language learners have in common? The answer, well, it might just surprise you with how simple it is. 91%. That is an absolutely overwhelming consensus. A staggering 69 out of 76 people agreed that the single most important factor is motivation. It's not about your IQ, it's about your why. Why are you learning this? Is it for travel, for a loved one, for your career? That internal drive is more powerful than any textbook or app you'll ever find. All right, let's look at one final question here. If you could only guarantee one single element in every class you ever take, what should it be? The agreement on this one is even more incredible. 97%. I mean, that's practically everyone.
73 out of 75 respondents agreed the one thing every lesson must have is clearly defined objectives. Just knowing exactly what you're supposed to learn by the end of that hour, like today I will learn how to order food from a menu. It gives you direction, purpose, and that amazing sense of accomplishment.
So, to sum it all up, forget the myth that you need to be a genius. Focus on what motivates you. Forget the idea of a rigid, punishing classroom. Instead, demand clear, achievable goals. And remember, the learning process isn't some big mystery. It involves real, manageable things, like imitation and the influence of your native language.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all this? Learning a language isn't some special gift that's reserved for a lucky few. It's about having the right mindset and using the right methods. So now that you have the facts, what's the first thing you're going to change about your own learning journey?